tonight is ask you this question. Tell me about the last time that somebody complimented you for something you did. Take a second to think about that. And I want you to share with me what it was like the last time somebody complimented you for something that you did. I'm going to turn my tablet on here. You guys take a second to think about that. Anybody got something that comes to mind, a time that you were complimented for something that you did? I'm going to give you guys license to brag about yourself for a second. So, anybody else? Yeah, Jake. Ooh, okay. Like a job well done, something that you did. Like, what was the job?
I was
All right. So some hard work, some sweaty work, right? And you did a good job. You got complimented for it. Cool. Anybody else? Somebody been yeah, Sandy.
I just want to share because I've been blessed to have worked at the same place for 29 years.
Yeah.
Since I retired this year, many of you guys know. It was a blessing to maybe the impact that I've had over for a lot of years. God gets the glory for it.
Yeah, awesome. So, after 29 years of serving, right, there's lots of gratitude, lots of thanks for putting time. Cool. Definitely some praise that comes along with that. Anybody else? A time you were complimented for a job you did. Go ahead, Jules.
Someone told me today that I was fast.
You were fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a compliment for me.
All right. That's a compliment. I'm assuming this was at Chick-fil-A.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you were expedient with your time, right, and speedy, right, in the way you're done. Great. All right. That's a prize quality to have in the fast food industry. I mean, if we can call Chick-fil-A fast food, right? It's its own thing. No, okay. We're great. Mason.
Giving a good handshake.
You were complimented on a good handshake. Okay. Got some oomph in there. Are you like a one pumper or like a multiple pumper?
It depends on what the other person's doing.
So you can like adapt your handshake to the handshake that's given to you. All right, cool. What do you do when somebody just gives you like that limp hand thing?
Doctor handshake.
It kind of like, I don't know that it bothers me, but it kind of bothers me.
It kind of bothers you, but
Because,
you.
like, it just means something not like confident, or something like that.
What you do is you get in by the elbow, then you pull them in for the bro hug, right? That's how you get out of the limp handshake. Okay. My favorite handshake, by the way, totally off topic, is the coroner's handshake, where he takes you and feels your pulse at the same time, just to make sure you're still, your heart's still going. Okay. Right. Great. All right. So, let me ask a little bit of a follow-up question. So, a couple of things here were shared, right? A job well done. You were fast. You were good with your time. Years of time that were put in, right? A good handshake. Okay, some great examples here. Tell me this: if you think back to that compliment now, what was it about your work or what you did that caught somebody else's attention? What was it about that job that brought out that compliment from somebody? Sort of a little of a follow-up question here. Determination. Okay, so the attitude that you put into it is a huge factor, right? So you said that. Attention to detail. Great. Okay. Okay, time spent. Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jake. Yeah. Okay. So the amount of time you're willing to sacrifice, as well as the way that you use the time that was put in. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So here's the deal. When you do a good job, when you do hard work for somebody, when you commit yourself to finishing a task, right? Your choices are going to make, and the way you spend your time, your hard work is going to leave an impact. It's going to leave an impression on somebody, right? And that's what causes them to then say in turn, man, you did a great job, right? Because you put in the time, you put in the work, right? You were dependent, you were dependable, excuse me. You were determined, you were invested. There's all these different words that we could use to describe the attitude there, but you made a choice that had an impact on somebody, okay? So our last priority here tonight. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about the fact that we got to worship Jesus above all else. He's supreme, right? His supremacy is above all. We need to value others' needs. And this last idea, guys, is to be an influence, okay? To make an impact, to make choices and do things that in turn not that you're fishing for compliments, right? But that you are making an impact on people so that they notice the impact that you're having. Okay. And the reality, guys, is that as Christians, you guys are right here in the front row. You guys cool? All right. The reality is that as Christians, no matter what we do, we are going to be an influence. The question is really, are we going to be a good influence or are we going to be a bad influence, right? Whatever you do, people are going to see it, right? And it's really a matter of whether you're going to be a good influence or a bad influence. Now, the following essay, so aspiring college students, this is for you guys, okay? The following essay was written by a student applying for admission to New York University in response to this essay question. Are there any personal accomplishments or significant experiences you have had that have helped define you as a person? Okay? And by the way, the author was indeed accepted into the NYU, and you'll see why in a second. So here's the essay that was written. This is an actual essay. I am a dynamic figure, often seen scaling walls and crushing ice. I have been known to remodel train stations on my lunch breaks, making them more efficient in the area of heat retention. I translate ethnic slurs for Cuban refugees. I write award-winning operas. I manage time efficiently. Occasionally, I tread water for 3 days in a row. I woo women with my sensuous and godlike trombone playing. I can pilot bicycles up severe inclines with unflagging speed, and I cook 30-minute brownies in 20 minutes. I am an expert in stucco, a veteran in love, and an outlaw in Peru. Using only a hoe and a large glass of water, I once single-handedly defended a small village in the Amazon basin from a horde of ferocious army ants. I play bluegrass cello. I was scouted by the Mets. I am the subject of numerous documentaries. When I'm bored, I build large suspension bridges in my yard. I enjoy urban hang gliding. On Wednesdays after school, I repair electrical appliances free of charge. Anybody doing that before youth group? Okay. I am an abstract artist, a concrete analyst, and a ruthless bookie. Critics worldwide swoon over my original line of corduroy evening wear. I don't perspire. Paul, you're killing me here. I'm trying to keep a straight face, all right? Let's see. I don't perspire. Does not sweat. I am a private citizen, yet I receive fan mail. I have been caller number 9 and have won the weekend passes. Last summer, I toured New Jersey with a traveling centrifugal force demonstration. I bat for it. My deft floral arrangements have earned me fame in international botany circles. This one cracks me up. Children, trust me. Don't know why that's in there, but children, trust me. Okay. I can hurl tennis rackets at small moving objects with deadly accuracy. I once read Paradise Lost, Moby Dick, and David Copperfield in one day, and still had time to refurbish an entire dining room that evening. I know the exact location of every food item in the supermarket. I have performed several covert operations for the CIA. I sleep once a week. When I do sleep, I sleep in a chair. While on vacation in Canada, I successfully negotiated with a group of terrorists who had seized a small bakery.
Oh.
The laws of physics do not apply to me. I balance, I weave, I dodge, I frolic, and my bills are all paid. On weekends, to let off steam, I participate in full contact origami. Just gonna let that one sink in for a second.
Oh, what?
Years ago, I discovered the meaning of life, but forgot to write it down. I have made extraordinary 4-course meals using only a mulai and a toaster oven. I breed prize-winning clams. I have won bullfights in San Juan, cliff diving competitions in Sri Lanka, and spelling bees at the Kremlin. I have played Hamlet, I have performed open heart surgery, and I have spoken with Elvis, but I have not yet gone to college. This was the essay that he wrote, actual essay, and the author was accepted into New York University. So, fairly impressive resume, right? Fairly impressive resume to be able to cliff dive and win spelling bees and win bullfights, right? In
Urban
countries.
gliding,
Urban hang gliding, right? That'd be fun to participate in. So here's the question, all right? We get this impression that people have to be really confident, really good at what they do, have all this experience, have age and wisdom and all kinds of experience behind them in order to be influential people, right? Or maybe we just think, maybe I don't have to be awesome, right? But I should be better than what I am in order to be influential. Okay, and I think that's actually the opposite of what the Bible would communicate to us. So we're going to camp on one verse tonight, guys. So I want you to turn not to Mark 12, but to 1 Timothy 4 tonight. All right, 1 Timothy 4. It was a what was it? Evening corduroy wear. Evening corduroy wear. Original line. I like full contact origami. That's my favorite.
That's a really good one.
So 1 Timothy 4:12 is where we are. Probably a familiar verse, but I want to spend some time dissecting it. Okay. So 1 Timothy 4:12. Here's what we see. Let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. Who's this written to? Timothy. It's written to Timothy by Paul. Timothy is Paul's like spiritual protege, right? He brings Timothy up, trains him, and then puts him in charge of the church at Ephesus. And by the way, Timothy is like in his 20s. He's a really young guy, okay? So let me see. Anybody 17 in here? 17 or 18? Okay, a couple of you guys here. So let's just say in 3 years, Pastor Phil, Pastor Scott, and I are all going to go elsewhere, and you guys are going to be in charge of the church here, okay? Think you can handle that? You guys up for, you can run youth ministry, adult ministry, women's ministry, children's ministry, worship ministry, everything else, facilities related, projects, all that kind of stuff. You guys are on top of all that if we kind of go and do our thing, right?
Yeah.
Split it all up? All right, cool. All right, so that's where Timothy is, okay? He is like 21, 22, 23, somewhere there. He's a young guy in charge of a church, and you don't necessarily see that in this text, but the churches like just chews him up, man. They're just a bunch of argumentative people. They don't want to learn. They don't want to submit. And so Paul challenges Timothy and says, don't let anyone despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example in your speech, in your conduct, in your love, in your faith, in your purity. All right, so that's who Timothy is. He's a young guy. By the way, if you might have, if you've got a King James or an NIV, the language there might say, look down on or think little of you, right, because you're young. Basically what the idea is that somebody's holding an understanding of you that says, I have more experience, I have more wisdom, I have more age, I've been doing this longer, right, than you, and so I look down on you because you're younger, because you're less experienced, because from my perspective, you don't know as much as I do, okay? That's where Timothy finds stuff to be, and Paul says, don't let anybody do that, okay? Don't let anybody do that. Set the believers an example anyway. Example, by the way, is the Greek word typikos, which sounds like typical, right? Typically, and typical means normal. Like, so when you say, if that's so typical, which I don't think anybody really says that anymore, but typical means normal. Like, I can expect that because that's what is just the normal behavior, the characteristic behavior of somebody. So what Paul is saying is, with your regular behavior, with the character that you exhibit, set that example, all right? Be an example to the people that are around you, and be an influential force as a result of that. So here's what we're going to say tonight. I'm going to just briefly throw some things up here on the board. 5 qualities that Paul has Timothy say. He encourages Timothy, to exemplify in his speech, in his conduct, in his love, in his faith, and in his purity. So we're going to move quickly through these. In his speech, what he means by that, guys, is no gossip, no complaining, no profanity, and no crude jokes. Okay, and we find a lot of basis for that over in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29. Paul says, "Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good, for the use of edifying, building up, that it may communicate and minister grace to the hearers." Okay, in no way should Timothy's speech as a young man be full of gossip, be full of complaining, be full of profanity, be full of crude joking, because he's supposed to create an example for everyone. And by the way, as a young man, if that's what his speech is like, if it's full of gossip and complaining and crude jokes and stuff, then those older guys would have every right to look down on him, right? Because he's exemplifying a characteristic that Paul, and the scriptures would have would never encourage Timothy to do that, right? Does that make sense? So he's not exemplifying that, but Paul's saying, don't even go there. Don't even go there. Maintain this character that you have in your speech. By the way, James talks about the fact that our self-control begins and ends with our speech, right? You guys remember in James chapter 3, it talks about how the tongue is like a fire. You guys remember how the tongue is like a fire, right? It's like a world of iniquity, and it blazes an entire forest down, right? And it actually says, if any man offends not in word, the same is a perfect man, able to bridle his whole body. So, like, the ability to be self-controlled begins with the way that we control our speech, and it ends with the way we control control our speech, because that's the sign of being a mature human being. So basically, Paul's saying, edify, build up. Don't ever insult or tear down. You guys know this song by Hawk Nelson, Words? Words can build you up, words can break you down. Start a fire in your heart or put it out. Let my words be life, let my words be truth. I don't want to say a word unless it points the world back to you. Great song, right? Your brother did that, your brothers did that one time, right? Great song. Communicates so very clearly this principle. With your speech, set an example, okay? And I love the way that song captures it. I don't want to say a word unless it points the world back to you, right? Everything that I say should communicate the fact that I'm set apart, that my love for God has changed me, and I want to glorify Him. With me on that one?
Yeah.
Awesome. Number 2, conduct. Character equals conduct over time. Character equals conduct over time. What do I mean by that? Character equals conduct over time. Math people, help me out. Alyssa's smiling over there. Any other math folks want to take a stab at what I'm trying to say here? Go ahead, Dave.
What you do is how much time you have on it.
Okay, yeah. So the measure of my time and what I do at that time is going to communicate something about my character. All right.
Organization and like taking like the people who are very organized with their scheduling and stuff. Usually, they're like more have better character, and people who have less of it have like less character. It doesn't really say that right there, but it's just saying like kind of like Danny said, like the matter of how you use your time is how your character can be.
So maybe I think, are you getting that, like being intentional with your time, like being specific? Because somebody who's not organized with their time is going to lose time because they're not planning well ahead.
Well, just the thing about time itself is that's like a small thing. So if you can't even conduct your own time, like everything else in your life is going to be like not ever organized.
I get what you're saying there. Cool. Judith.
Maybe like your character is based on how you act over a certain period of time.
Yeah, awesome. So character is the measure. What I'm getting at here is that my character is the measure of how I behave over a long period of time. So my behavior is observable to people, right? I make choices, I say things, I exhibit certain behaviors, I exhibit certain priorities, certain preferences, right? And over time, people who see me act a certain way are going to understand that's my character, okay? Now, reputation and character sometimes don't align, right? Because I might do something dumb one time, somebody sees that, and then they have a bad impression of who I am as a person. But the truth of character is that it reveals itself over time. The more consistently you act and speak in a certain way, the more your character is revealed. So I have this very vivid memory of Tara and I were in it was either Mopettes or it was like children's church or something. It was one kind of children's program, and I had James, and I had Isaac Snow. Okay, and if you guys have helped out with kids, kids programs, you've got those kids, right, that stick in your memory, right? And so I had this great memory. Okay, so I'm sitting on the floor. I'm like, I think I've got like, it was like a bunch of different age groups too. So it must have been Mopettes because I had a bunch of kids like thrown together that were different ages. So I had a baby in my lap. Okay, and I'm sitting on the floor and I'm playing with this baby, and Isaac Snow has this plastic hammer from the construction set that's in that one classroom down there. Okay. And he's playing with this hammer, and he's just having a grand old time. And suddenly, from across the room, James is like, "I want that hammer!" And he goes racing across the room after Isaac with the hammer. And so we had to, separate children and make sure that the hammer was, not smacking people in the face. Okay. But you guys know, like when you help out with kids club or children's church or something like that, you've got those kids that are like, you just sort of know the way that they're going to act, the way that they think, the way that they behave, right? Because Proverbs 20:11 says that even a child is known by his actions, right? Whether his conduct is pure and right. So, I love James. James is a great kid, by the way, and so is Isaac. They have such personalities, right? And I just know, sort of, just having spent a minimal amount of time with them, the way they think, the way they act, the way they behave, right? And so that applies, guys, to us as teenagers, us as adults. That the way that we act and the way that we think reveals itself as our character over time. You guys tracking with me? All right. So the choices that we make and the way that we speak, the way that we conduct ourselves, is going to reveal whether we're mature. It's going to reveal whether we act with wisdom, whether we act with intent, whether we choose to be selfless or selfish, self-controlled or impulsive, right? That's our character revealed over time. And Paul says to Timothy, set an example in your speech, and your conduct, because the way that you demonstrate your maturity to your congregation is going to be revealed over time, and they're going to learn to respect you. They're going to learn to grow along with you and to follow your leading, because they're going to see that your conduct is above reproach. Right? You guys with me on that? Okay. Number 2, that was conduct. And by the way, the choice to live in third place, that's a long-term character thing, right? And which is why, when Jesus talks about how you should love the Lord your God by your heart, soul, mind, and strength, like that's just not like an instantaneous thing, that I just do all of a sudden and it's just that's what I do, right? Like it takes time for me to root out the idols that are in my heart, and it takes time for me to learn how to love my neighbor as myself and not just love myself, right? So this is a conduct, this is a character thing that develops over time, and the more mature I get in my faith, the easier it is for me to exemplify that. Number 3, in love. Love believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. That's from 1 Corinthians 13:7. Here's what that means, guys. This is a really hard one. This is a really hard one, okay? This is a great verse, right, to have wood burned onto your marriage thing that you get, and you put it above your bureau or something. Love believes all things, hopes all things, and endures things. I've got it in 3 different picture frames in my house, right? Great quotable verse. So hard to live out. Why? Because if love believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things, that implies that there's a lot of conflict going on. It implies that there's a lot of hard things you're working through, and it implies that I am choosing to love somebody who maybe doesn't respond and turn to me. Right? If I endure all things, that means that my love is sustained through the hard time. Right? That I'm working to care for this person even when they're not responding well to me. When I am hoping all things, I'm believing in a future where we can have some restoration, right? Even though things are awful right now, I'm looking forward to a time where this can be resolved. And if I believe all things, guys, what I love about that particular one is that I'm choosing to see the potential in somebody who's hurt me, and rather than saying that person's hurt me, they're always going to hurt me. They every time I try to make things right, this is what they do, right? I'm saying, you know what? I'm going to choose to believe that this time they might respond positively. I see the potential in another fallen human being, right? Another sinful human being who needs grace just like I need grace, and I'm choosing to believe the best of them no matter what. That doesn't mean I'm blindly saying, oh yeah, they did all this stuff, but I forgot about that. Forget about it. There is no such thing as forgive and forget. Okay, what that sort of cliche expression means is that I'm not going to hold it against somebody anymore, and that's absolutely true. But when I come to somebody who has hurt me repeatedly, and remember, Jesus said that forgiveness is extended, 700 or 490 times, right? 70 times 7. Meaning endlessly. You should always be able to forgive. It doesn't mean that I'm just going to forget and pretend like nothing ever happened. It means that I come with an understanding that I want to work through this with you. That I've been hurt, you've been hurt, but I believe the best of us. I believe in a future that we can work this out, right? And so love, that Paul commands to Timothy, is these people disrespect you. These people don't want to hear what you have to say in your church. They think that you're a young kid who doesn't know anything. But if you love them, then you're going to bear with them in patience, and you're going to forgive them for frankly, their rudeness, right? You're going to work through them because you love, work with them because you love, and believe the potential of what this relationship could be. Okay, you guys tracking with me on that, right? This is the hard one. Love is the hard one because people are hard to love. But please remember that we're hard to love too. I'm a despicable human sinner, the way every other human being is. Okay? So the grace that I receive, I need to extend to other people. That's love. In faith, unwavering confidence in the Lord despite terrible circumstances. Hebrews 11 talks about how faith is the essence of things unseen, right? That I have my confidence in something that I can't necessarily see immediately. And so because circumstances are bad, Paul says, the church isn't listening to you, persevering and having faith that God is at work is a key factor here. So even though everybody else chooses to complain about circumstances, I have the faith to say, God's doing something. I'm going to place my confidence in Him. Even though nobody else prioritizes the things of the Lord, I'm going to have the faith that God is trying to train me. He's trying to work through these circumstances. So I'm going to devote myself to my quiet time, even though nobody else does, right? I'm going to devote myself to prayer. Even though nobody else does, I'm going to devote myself to being grateful, even though nobody else does, because I know that God is working. I have faith in Him. Okay? Last idea, and then we're going to sort of wrap this up. Impurity. Holiness in speech, thought, and action. Holiness in speech, thought, and action. I want to turn, keep a finger in 1 Timothy, so we'll come back, but over to Romans 12. This is, by the way, a life verse. So if you guys aren't working on any scripture memory right now, these are a couple verses to really commit to memory. This could really change the way that you think about your spiritual walk, right? Romans 12. So read the first 2 verses here. Again, Paul writing says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Let me just unpack that a little bit, okay? I'm appealing to you. I'm begging you, right? I'm coming to you humbly. And I know he's coming humbly, by the way, because he says, I'm appealing to you by the mercies of God. So in other words, Paul's not saying, I've got this figured out. I'm better than you. I've got my living sacrifice, holy and acceptable, all figured out. He's saying, it is only by the mercies of God that I can even come to you and bring this charge, right, to encourage you to do this. So he says, I'm coming to you humbly to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Holy, again, remember, means set apart. It's something that I'm taking something that is common and setting it aside, saying I'm devoting this to the Lord. So I'm taking my body, which includes my thought life, which includes my speech, which includes my attitudes, which includes my actions, right? I'm setting all that stuff aside. And Paul says that is what worship is. Okay, you guys may have heard me say this at some point, but worship is not just what we do on a Wednesday night when we sing songs. And worship is not just what we do when we come into this building. Okay, worship is a lifestyle, and we are always, by the way, always worshiping something. We're always worshiping something. It's just a question of whether I'm worshiping God, whether I'm worshiping myself, or some other idol. Okay, so Paul says, the act of putting aside your conduct, your speech, your attitudes, your heart feelings, right? That's your worship. And setting that aside to be holy before the Lord, that is what you're doing to devote yourself to Him. So then he says, don't be conformed to this world, verse 2, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good, acceptable, and perfect. Transformation. Not being like what I was, and not being like what the world is, but being something else entirely. Okay? Transformation is, there's nothing left of the old. It's something radically different. Okay? You guys get the picture there? It's not that I'm just sort of, we understand it's progressive, right? Because I'm learning more and more how to do that. But like the picture is like I was that, and now I'm something else. It was light and dark, 2 different opposite things. Okay? Paul says that's where we should be with our conduct, with our speech, and with our purity, right? That I'm setting aside everything to be radically transformed for God's glory. So, those are the 5 things from 1 Timothy 4, okay? Back up here. In speech, I'm not going to be gossiping, I'm not going to be complaining, I won't be profane, right? No crude jesting. Conduct, my character is going to be revealing over time. Love believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. My faith is unwavering in what God is doing, and I'm setting aside my speech and my actions and my thoughts to be radically different, radically transformed. So, remember the question I said in the beginning was, you are going to have an influence, so is it going to be positive or is it going to be negative? The second question, and this is where we're going to close, is, are you going to be influential or are you going to be easily influenced? Are you going to be influential or are you going to be easily influenced? Because again, Paul is telling Timothy to set the example, not to be influenced, but to be an influencer. Right? That's probably not grammatically correct, but that's what I'm saying anyway, right? To be the influence, don't be easily influenced. So, what you just saw me flash up here for a second is what's called Stephen Covey's circles of influence. Anybody seen these before at some point? These are just really, really helpful tools to think through. And if you have, again, the Bible app on your phone, you have it. It's right there in the event thing, okay? So you can save it. Covey's circles of influence. There are 2 circles here. Number 1, circle of concern, circle of influence, okay? So let me just explain this really quickly. Circle of concern, the outside circle, encompasses the wide range of concerns that we might have, but we have no control over, okay? So things like my health, things like a bully at school, things like a bad teacher, okay? Things like circumstances that, I worry about, but I don't actually have any control over them. Does that make sense? The things outside of my control, I can worry about them, but I can't actually do anything about them immediately. Circle of influence, that's the interior circle. It's something that I can do something about, right? It's something that is within my power. So largely, guys, I was trying to put a list of examples for this. It really comes down to my choices. Okay? Things that I actually have control over are very few. So the things that I know for sure that I can absolutely make a choice is my choices, right? It's my ability to choose to do something, okay? Now, there are 2 ways that this plays out. Number 1, the reactive model. These are people who react, right? And so what they do is they focus on the things that are outside their circle of influence. They focus on the stuff that's outside of their control. And so what happens is their circle of influence shrinks, right? You see how it got smaller there, right? Because their concerns have expanded. All their focus is on the stuff they can't control, and their focus on the things that are within their control is so small. They just can't focus on those things. What does it mean, by the way, to be reactive as opposed to proactive? What does it mean to be reactive? Grant.
Normally just like kind of like the guy that you showed us last week on his chair. Like he was just sitting there and he was like showing that he was like aggravated, but he wasn't doing anything about it.
Okay.
So like reactive is like you give a reaction, but proactive is more like you do something instead of just talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. Good. That's a great example. Lexi, just
Yeah, like, reactive is like you just kind of let things happen and then you like have a response to it, whereas proactive is more like looking ahead and you're trying to, like, you do what you're gonna do and then others react.
Okay. So you're talking about the difference between responding to something and actually making a choice before that thing actually happens. Yeah. So I had a reaction over the weekend. Took college group camping. You may have noticed this nasty looking blister that's like popping out on my finger up here. That is because I was warming my coffee in the fire. Okay. Great idea, right? Warming my coffee in the fire. And I'm thinking, it's only been in there for like 2 minutes. And I reached down to pick it up, and it was at least the cup was extremely hot. The coffee itself was kind of lukewarm, which was really disappointing. But I got a giant blister, so I picked it up, and immediately I put it down, right? So I reacted to the heat that was coming into my hand, right? And I put it down immediately. That's what it's like to be reactive, right? That something happens and I respond to it, okay? Now, we're all going to be reacting in some way, shape, or form, but the goal of trying to change my perspective from being a reactive person to a proactive person is that I don't let the circumstance be the thing that defines me. I'm making choices to either get in front of the circumstance or change the way that I respond. So I'm not letting that thing control who I am, because that's what's happening here, right here, right? The concern is so big, it's controlling who I am. It's actually changing my perspective rather than me being proactive to make a choice and do something that might make a difference other way. And that's this model, right? My influence, if I'm proactive, right, I expand my influence because I focus on the things that I can actually do something about. So the nature of this energy is really positive, right? By the way, people who are reactive focus on what they do or don't have. Okay? People who are reactive focus on what they do or don't have. Here's some examples of what that thinking looks like. Okay, I'll be happy when ... Don't have something. I'll be happy when I have it. Okay. Number 2, if only I had a teacher who wasn't ... Okay. Reactive personality. Number 3, if I could just have had more time ... Reactive personality, not proactive. Okay. If only I had a more outgoing personality. You see, the focus is on what I have or what I don't have, whereas a proactive person focuses on what he or she can be. Okay. This is a proactive person. I can be a better role model. I can be more diligent. I can be more loving, more understanding. I can be humble. To seek out broken friendships and attempt to make restoration. I can be proactive to reach out and start new friendships. And guys, in 1 Timothy 4:12, right, Paul said, "Let no one despise you for youth, but set the believers an example." That word "set" is the Greek word ginomai, which means to come into being or become. Be proactive. Do something. Don't just assume that your circumstances are going to change or allow yourself to be influenced by them, but be an influencer. Change your behavior as a result. Are you guys tracking with me on this? Okay? Because what happens, guys, is we look at a problem that's around us and we just assume it is so big. How am I possibly going to do something about this? If only, and we start being reactive rather than saying, how can I come about this? How can I change my attitude? How can I change my thought process to be able to do something and not just assume that everything around me has to change before I can do something, right? And that applies, guys, to the way that we live in third place. It applies to the way that we try to be like Timothy and be an example, okay? So just some things to wrap us up here tonight. Ways to be proactive and influential here in third place, all right? Because ultimately that's what I'm driving at here. Ways to be proactive and influential in third place. Choose to care about somebody else's crappy day. Listen to them, ask good, encouraging questions, all right? When you come in and your day was terrible, rather than complain to somebody else about it, ask somebody else how their day was. Listen, encourage them, okay? Choose to give up your right to something, a chair, a turn, an opinion, for the sake of somebody else, whether or not they ask for it. It's tough to do it at home, right? Because it's your turn to watch your show. But maybe brother and sister or mom and dad need some rest too, and to give up something for the sake of somebody else, whether or not they ask for it. Choose to save your competitive drive for competitive sports and just have fun. Okay? Don't argue about rules. Just participate. Don't insist things are unfair. How about this? Choose to refuse gossip and only speak well of others, even if the gossip is true. Okay. Here's the reality, guys. When we struggle with gossip, often the thing that we're talking about is a true thing. It might be an inflated thing, but it's probably a true thing. Don't talk about that. Choose to forego that and only speak positively to somebody, right? Only let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but only what's good for edifying, for building up, for being encouraging, okay? Choose, how about this? Choose to intentionally discuss your quiet time with friends instead of always small talking. That would be a powerful influence for you to have in this room, to have a conversation with somebody sitting next to you that's not just about Defenders on Netflix, okay? But it's actually about your quiet time and what you're learning and growing in. To make that conscious choice to have that kind of conversation is a powerful thing. So here's what I want you guys to do, okay? And I want to challenge, especially you guys who are going to be seniors in 2018 and seniors in 2019, okay? Because we're I don't know if you guys were aware of this, but last week we had 6 new visitors. Okay, that was awesome, and I was so glad to have them, and I hope they all come back at some point. But we have got to do a better job about bringing people into this group. There are some of you that are really good at that, and some of you that really struggle with that, and that's okay, because not everybody is necessarily gifted in that way, but we must make a more conscious effort to be welcoming, a much more conscious effort to bring people in. So here's some things, especially you seniors for next year and for 2019, but everybody in this room as well. I want you guys to remember what it was like to be new here. And maybe you were reached out to, or maybe you weren't, okay? Maybe somebody made an effort to welcome you in and bring you into this group, and maybe somebody didn't. But I want you to consider how that experience was, and then reach out to somebody who's new or younger, like you wish you'd been reached out to, or like somebody reached out to you. Okay? Be that person. Be proactive. Don't just wait for some of our younger 7th graders and for some visitors to come in and just make friends on their own, because they're not going to. They're going to feel left out on the edge of the room and not be able to plug in. Okay, so be proactive in that. Go and bring them in. Okay. Welcome them in. And so I want you guys to develop a mentality that searches for ways to just bring people in, to be an encouragement to them, right? And to welcome them regardless of the way they're dressed, the way they speak, right? The way they're, whatever their age is, whatever their gender is. Okay, I don't care. Bring them in, target them, and to be kind to them and bring them in. Okay, because remember that third place, all of this is an opportunity to serve, not just to be served. Okay. Like I said last week, this group is for you guys. This is for you, right? I want you guys to be encouraged, every single one of you to be encouraged, to be fed, to have a great time when you're in this building, okay? But it's not just about you. It's about the people that are sitting next to you, too. And so you guys are part and parcel to encouraging them and welcoming them and bringing them. Questions on that stuff? Thoughts on that stuff? All right. This is all easier said than done, I understand. But we've got to make a conscious effort to make those choices, and guys, it begins with you. It's not the person next to you who's going to take the initiative, because that's outside your circle of influence, right? You have the ability in and of yourself to make a choice to reach out and touch somebody. You can't necessarily assume that the person next to you is going to take that initiative. So that's where I want to leave you guys with. So next week we're gonna we're gonna meet in the park. We're gonna have some fun and play some games, and we're gonna do we'll have the Faith in the Field the following week, and then we're gonna start small groups up again the following week on September the 10th, 13th, or something like that. The following Wednesday, and we'll get back to our normal schedule here. But I want you guys to be thinking about this stuff as we go into that, because next week would be a great opportunity for you to invite your friends who maybe are come once or twice, or maybe they've never been here, and it would be a great opportunity for you to meet somebody new and actually really get to know them over the next few weeks as we get ready to transition back into the fall. All right, I'm gonna close this in prayer, and then we're gonna go be an influence. That's what we want to do. Lord Jesus, thank you for this time. And thank you